Call to order the work session for City of East Grand Forks to Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. City Administrator, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olsted.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riefel.
Here.
Councilmembers Clarence Better. Here. Ben Pachevitsky.
Here.
Dale Helms. Here. Brian Larson.
Here.
And Karen Peterson.
Here.
That was term quorum. Number one, request to consider creation of a new position in the police department. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is picking up kind of where we left off back on February 14th, where we began this discussion. At that point in time, we were just kind of looking at fleshing out, trying to weigh the different options of how we might proceed with this based on the feedback that I got that night, and then some talking to some of our staff and looking at some things that are done other places. Ultimately decided to put forward the proposal to potentially hire the people into this police recruit position and pay them $20 an hour and 20 hours per week. In essence, this would be like many other states do, where they're hiring somebody as a police officer and then send them to the police academy. Here in this case, we can't hire them as a police officer because of our post-license rules in the state of Minnesota, but we could hire them as this police recruit where they don't have any arrest authority or anything like that. Essentially, we're kind of committing to them and getting them to commit to us before they've become officially post-licensed. And they would get this part-time wage from either during their final semester in the 2-year program or else during their summer skills program if they're a 4-year law enforcement student or criminal justice student, right up until the time they take their post-test and are officially licensed, at which point in time we would then, assuming they've passed every other aspect of the hiring process, we would bring them on board as a police officer at that point.
Do you have any questions for Chief?
Well, I do.
I do.
Karen Peterson.
You want me to go first? A couple questions that I have is, how close are these schools, and on average, what is the class population, or what is the class size?
Varies dramatically. Thief River Falls is the closest. Their law enforcement program is Northland is the closest. Their law enforcement program is in the Thief River Falls campus. They only have 6 current second-year students. They have about 15 in their first-year class. The 6 is an aberration. That's kind of an offshoot of the George Floyd situation and the negative feelings about law enforcement nationwide. Almost every criminal justice program across the country had a down couple of years there, but we're starting to see some improvements on that, as the fact that they've got 15 in the second-year program is testament to that. Crookston also has a 4-year program. UND has a 4-year program. Moorhead State has both a 4-year program, as does NDSU, and then the Tech at Moorhead has a 2-year law enforcement program. Alexandria would be the next closest, and then probably Hibbing.
Okay, so as far as workforce shortage goes, because this is something that I deal with on average, what is the workforce shortage currently of the police force as a whole?
Star Tribune had an article recently that said, looking at all of the students that will be graduating in this coming year, that doesn't even meet the requirements for just the state law enforcement agencies.
Okay.
So even if you take all the cities and counties out of, there isn't even enough to cover just the state.
Right, and so I think that's part of what my concern is that in the field that I work in, we're constantly dealing with the same type of thing. Mm-hmm. Right, and it's been my experience where you do throw money at these kids, and it's a great concept to start out with, and they commit, but then within 1 year their lifestyle changes, or they feel that they can't do it. Those types of things. And in your proposal, it does say that they would have to pay that money back. I'm looking at what are we doing to make this a long-term fix, right? And it's the same with our profession, where these communities aren't looking at doing a long-term fix. They're going for the same pool of graduates that everybody else is. That pool just isn't big enough. So this is, and in your proposal, you do state that this has been going on for 2 years. I respect that. I get that piece. But again, what is the long-term fix for this? And that's why I like the mentality of a grow your own type of thing. Mm-hmm. I know that it costs a little bit more, but in the end, are we going to get a better product?
I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean by grow your own.
Look to somebody in your community, right? It's the same with us, where we have numerous people who have a degree, say in biology or chemistry, right, who could come to work for us. And maybe there's people with criminal justice degrees currently within the community that haven't necessarily thought about going this path, or they don't have the funds to continue to go this path. Is it realistic that we could grow our own?
Like, in my opinion, that's kind of what we're trying to do here.
But you're seeking out a student that all of these other police departments are going to go with the same approach, where they're going to go for all of the same graduates, and what will set us apart?
Well, right now, there aren't people doing this approach, which is why I was trying to do it.
I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
I just really want to look long-term, theoretically, because it's been my experience many times where you do this similar thing in healthcare, and the kids look at the dollar signs and they think it's a great deal, they think it's amazing, and then they get there and mom and dad are 5 hours away,
Yep.
or their spouse gets pregnant or they get pregnant, and then their lifestyle changes and they leave. And then this healthcare facility is in the same boat, right? And is that going to happen here too? It has been my experience that I would say more often than not, these kids don't stay. And so that's why I like the idea of investing in somebody locally.
Yeah. If you look at our staff, the majority of our officers are local. Quite a few are actually East Grand Forks born and bred, and a number of others are from within an hour's drive. I think that's probably where the majority of our recruiting would be, probably within that ring of Alexandria, Thief River Falls, Fargo, Moorhead, Crookston. Those are probably the schools that the majority of our emphasis would be on. We certainly have done advertising, and we'll continue to do advertisement locally to try to attract people, but with our post-licensing requirements, what you have to be able to be licensed as a police officer in the state of Minnesota, we're somewhat limited. North Dakota they don't face the same challenges we do. Grand Forks PD can hire somebody with a 2-year degree and send them off to the academy. I was at a meeting at GFPD today. They're in the process of hiring a couple of people right now that they will then send to Bismarck to the academy. They're going to be getting full pay and benefits while they're doing that. That's in essence what I'm saying to do here with those people that would be going to the summer skills program, except we wouldn't be giving them full pay and benefits. We'd be just paying them 20 hours a week.
But you're already identifying somebody that's in the program as opposed to sending them?
Yes. For us, we would be picking somebody that, for the ones that are going to skills, they would have completed their 4-year degree, but they still have to go to that 10-year, it's skills program, but it's what the average person would consider the police academy. North Dakota, they can hire them as a police officer and then send them to the academy. In reality, they can do it any time within the first year. Most agencies do it before they put the person on the street. So we're kind of doing the same thing, but we can't just pick a person with a 4, even if it's a criminal justice degree. If they have a 4-year criminal justice degree, they still have to go to that skills program before we can hire them.
Sure, and you're going to hire them as that police recruit.
Yeah.
So if somebody locally did have a criminal justice degree, you could hire them with that police recruit.
Under that police recruit aspect,
Right.
but have them to go to skills, yep. As long as they meet all the other educational requirements, which if they have a 4-year degree, they're typically going to have. If it's in law enforcement, yes. They can't from just a generic 2-year degree, whereas in North Dakota, it can be you don't even have to have a degree. Most of the large agencies have a college requirement. GFPD requires 2 years of college.
Anything else, Ms. Peterson? Mr. Gelson, did you have something first? Perfect.
I guess I would
Do you
just,
want to go up front there?
sorry, thank you. No, my questions were more, if we're going to agree to this, then we need to put some meat on this proposition, because right now I just really didn't understand it, where we were actually concentrating, if it was going to be 2 years, 4 years, local, like Thief River. I think BSU might even have a
They do.
program there, something like that to kind of echo what being said here to get somebody local rather than looking down in the cities or further away to try to get them here. But just I read it, I understand what you're doing, I just don't understand how legally I'd help you put it together without more information. That was it.
And I guess I was, and maybe we can't do it, but I guess just to try to put a little bit of teeth into having them give the commitment to us would be, my hope was that we would be able to write up some type of contract that if they left within 2 years, before 2 years went by, they would have to pay back the sum that they received during their police recruit time. Nothing once they were hired as a police officer. That's, from that point forward, it'd be just like hiring any other police officer if they chose to leave. But
No, and I think we can do any type of a contract. It's just, from what was written down, I'd have to sit down with you because there's just not enough there for me to figure out who you're looking for, what we're actually looking at, and how we were going to enforce it if in fact we've got a contract out there with somebody that's a 22-year-old kid, and we're going to say, now you owe us, I don't know, 10 grand, and the likelihood of us getting that without having to file a lawsuit against them is probably, or at least small claims, is pretty remote. So I was just, all that's kind of just rattling around in my head when we were doing it. I think it's a great idea that you're looking at. I just need more information to put together for myself to understand where we're going with it.
And I don't disagree with you. That might be difficult to get some of that money back, but I would lean towards having something in that contract that stated we could even do payroll deduction for their last 1 to 2 paychecks, depending on what time frame they leave in, where we could at least recapture some of it from that time frame.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
Mr. Larson.
Yeah, just a couple things. I participated in a program very similar to this in college in the construction industry. The dollars were quite a bit less, but it was like a recruiting tool. It wasn't binding, and so if I had not worked for a certain duration for this contractor who I did go work for, I didn't have to pay it back. But it was a smaller sum of money. Just to keep this conversation going, would we consider a different approach, more of like a scholarship program that was, targeted towards local kids, Polk County, Northwest Minnesota? Is there a program where we could spend these dollars to really focus on local people who are interested in criminal justice and help them with their schooling? And would that help promote people staying in this position? Because I do think it's correct that the people that we can recruit from up here into law enforcement are more likely to stay in the position rather than getting someone from the metro area. So Ron's concerns about how to make it binding and how to get our investment back are the same either way. But just putting that out there for conversation, it's another way to maybe target people as everyone's concerned about the cost of college.
I think that's an excellent idea, but that's a longer-term process. What we're trying to do right now is figure out a way to essentially fill our immediate need, because we have 2 openings as we speak. We do have a couple candidates that are starting to get in the mix that, knock on wood, we'll be able to move forward with, but it's too early to be able to say whether that's going to work out or not. But we also have a couple other projected openings yet still this year from a retirement and a person leaving. So we're still looking at having some openings for the near future. So this is a little bit more of the Band-Aid to try to fix that immediate need, but things like that are certainly good ideas. I mentioned in there that I would like to see us start to develop a paid internship program. We have taken on quite a few interns over the years. We haven't had any now for the last couple of years, starting with COVID. We haven't had one since then, but we're certainly open to having some interns brought forward, and my plan is for my 2024 budget proposal to have a small sum in there, $5,000 to $6,000 perhaps, just to be able to bring on a couple people as paid interns next year as a good recruiting tool. Hopefully they come in, have that time period with us where they get paid, essentially minimum wage or whatever we decide on for the hours of their paid internship, and with any luck, they really enjoy working with us during that time, and when they finish their college, we could bring them on, hopefully, or at least they'd be able to apply, and known commodity for us, known commodity for them. But that's, somewhat different, both with the same end goal, but one's a little bit more long-term than the other. And so I do like your idea, but I would almost view that as a supplement to what I'm proposing.
You're talking, but you're talking about, so when is your goal to, theoretically, what would be your goal to have this in place? Because you're talking about having it in their last semester. When is that? Is that spring semester?
Yes, well, typically it would be spring semester, yes. So conceivably, we could still get a student if the council were to pass this next week and we were able to figure out how we wanted to move forward with that contract piece. We could start pitching this to students. We have career fairs and recruiting visits coming up within the next couple of weeks. We could start pitching it as soon as those time periods, and conceivably, one thing we talked about in-house was maybe we set up essentially a hiring date. We currently don't have an end date to our hiring process, but we would perhaps do an end date for this. If you're interested in applying for this, you put in for just this program, and then we narrow it down to what we feel are the best candidate or candidates, depending on what our positions are looking like at that point in time. Still sometime this spring. If it was somebody that was still going through their final semester, conceivably could start paying them for the last month of the semester. If it was somebody that's finishing up a 4-year degree this spring, when they start their skills program in May, we could have them on board in May. That would be my hope in a perfect world.
Is there anybody or anything that's preventing you to recruit the ones that are in the post program?
Oh, we are, absolutely. We're doing that already. We're the Thief River is, as we talked about, the closest program. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had 2 of our officers went up and made a recruiting visit. Next Wednesday, one of those officers who actually works part-time with the Thief River Fall staff and I are both going up next Wednesday for another recruiting trip. That's targeting those 6 seniors or 6 second-year students, at Thief River. Thursday next week, we have staff that are going down to Moorhead Tech for a career fair there. Once we get into April, we have multiple career fairs that we're taking part in, and we're doing recruiting visits to Alexandria. So we are actively recruiting as we speak. But this, just in my mind, this would give us hopefully that thing that might be able to separate us from a different department. Because everybody's, like, as Ms. Peterson mentioned, everybody's targeting those same people. So if we could, find some way to hopefully get those folks a little more interested in us early on, and especially if they're from the region, those are obviously, that's preferable.
Mr. Reid.
If we're labeling it as an internship, do we qualify for some of the grant funding that's out there for various internship programs? I know there's some in some of the businesses that we can utilize. Life me right now, I can't think of them, but a lot of the businesses in town, speaking of engineering, they do internships, all of them every summer.
I know the state has been looking at doing additional funds to try to enhance programs for law enforcement, but I haven't seen anything specifically along those lines, and I'm not aware of anything. But I'm not saying it's not out there, I'm just not aware of it.
I think
Dale, do you
I'll
have-
let you know.
Dale, do you have anything?
No, I'm good. Listening, it sounds like it'll all get worked out. It'll all get worked out.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Ben, go ahead, sir.
Just for my information, what's the difference between 2-year and 4-year?
The 2-year program is your focus from the time you get to school. For example, in the program at Thief River Fall, Moorhead Tech, Alexandria, your focus is law enforcement. Virtually all of your classes are geared towards the law, or actual law enforcement. If you get a 4-year degree, which is what my background is, I went to Bemidji State University, got a bachelor's degree. I had English, I had math, I had biology, I had chemistry, I had all the typical classes that any 4-year graduate would have to have. The 2-year program is more career-oriented. They're taking classes, and this is how to be a police officer. I never had a how to be a police officer class. When they finish their 2-year degree, they already have that. They're ready to take that post-test at the end. They've done their skills training as part of that 2-year degree. A person like me that had the 4-year degree, You graduate and then you go to do the skills. That's your police academy is afterwards. As the 2-year, your police academy is actually built into your time in school. So it's, one is the 4-year more theoretical degree, the other one is 2-year career oriented.
Does one produce a better candidate?
Not necessarily. We have hired a lot of outstanding people with both. There was a time in my career that I probably would have been more biased towards the 4-year, and to a small degree, I might say I still am, just because you're a little bit older. If you go into that 2-year right out of high school, you're graduating, and your odds are you're 20 years old. You're now a police officer at 20 years old. That's a lot of responsibility for a 20-year-old. Some people are ready for it, some people aren't. That's what we're hopefully trying to work our way through as we're doing our hiring process, our interviews, our background investigations. We're trying to figure out if that person is going to be able to handle this position. More often than not, we're correct. Sometimes we're not. With a 4-year, you've got 2 more years of that person growing up, making mistakes, making life decisions that sometimes can make a difference. Other than that, the skill ability is very similar, because that 4-year person, once they've gone through the skills program, they're getting the how to be a police officer. They're learning how to make traffic stops. They're learning how to write tickets. They're learning how to run radar. They're learning how to deal with domestics, all the things that those 2-year students are going through during the course of their regular education. So it's, the end result is very similar. It's just, as I mentioned, slight bias towards the 4-year for the simple fact they're 2 years, typically 2 years older, and in theory 2 years more mature. But every single person is different.
I'm just looking that, I went to a 4-year college, and do we have to pay them more
No.
going? Like,
We don't have any
that's not
extra
part of
pay.
an equation
We don't.
when it comes to hiring?
No.
Okay. I'm just wondering that, if we're going after some 4-year degree students, are they going to say, well, 4,000 to 6,000 isn't enough, right? But I'm not saying any more than $20 an hour, I think, is what we had it listed as. Just thinking out loud, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
And I debated on from you go as low as minimum wage up to full pay and benefits. And I guess in my mind, the 20 hours a week, from talking to some of our staff, they said if they were a current student going through one of these programs and somebody offered them that, suddenly they're able to go, hey, I'm now getting $400 a week and I can just focus on my school. That's giving them some money that they wouldn't have otherwise, or they would have to be working in addition to their school. So it makes that last semester, if they're in the 2-year program, or it makes that summer of skills when they probably aren't going to be able to hold down an outside job, a little bit easier because they've got some money coming in. So that's kind of the attraction of this.
Mr. Gelsa, do you have something else?
I'm just curious on differentiating between the 2-year program where the individual is actually going for law enforcement and wants to be a police officer or law enforcement officer, and a 4-year degree where it goes everywhere. It goes to law. It goes to different aspects of the criminal justice field, and how you're going to narrow your scope.
That's why for the 4-year, it would be just during the course of their time when they're going to skills, because if they've made that commitment that they're going to attend skills, their intention is to become a police officer. So they would have already graduated with their 4-year degree, and then we would be paying them this police recruit pay just while they're going to skills.
And I guess I was just kind of curious on the conversation on the last semester, because if the last semester they're not going to be in skills yet.
Yeah,
So
that's where the last semester is just for those 2-year students, that when they graduate in the spring, they take their post-test and they're hireable.
Okay.
So, like Alexandria, for example, their students this spring, when they graduate, they take their post-test, they're good to go. So, end of May, they're hireable as a police officer. If I graduate from UND, I still have to go to skills this summer, so it's going to be like the end of July, August before I'm actually hireable. So it's a couple month time difference depending on which program you went.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? I think a lot of the discussion on how we do it, how it's set up, I think, getting together with Mr. Gallstead and working out that language, on what has been said about looking in the future of long-term solutions, using maybe a scholarship, maybe it has to go through Policemen's Association or some that due to scholarships, because I'm assuming that as a city we'd have difficulty doing that legally, I guess. But I mean, like the discussion of short-term and long-term, you know, Ms. Peterson brought up a good point. So did Mr. Larson. I mean,
And one of the things, I apologize, one of the things I'd mentioned to touch on, which I hadn't gotten to along with her questions, retention becomes very important through that. And that's some of the things we've attempted to do to try to enhance our training and getting the virtual program. A number of things like that are being part of the Grand Forks Special Operations Group. Those are all things that if you took a department our size and plopped them down just in the middle of Minnesota with, you know, a city of 9,000 people without an adjacent larger community like that, they're probably not going to be able to offer, you know, those job opportunities. We can have our folks try out and attempt to be, and it's obviously limited numbers of people that can do it. Every person in our department can't be a SWAT officer, but we have 3 people that are on the SWAT team. We've had people in the past that are negotiators. We have one that just joined the team here just recently. We have a member of their unmanned aviation services that just joined that team. So we have things that can be attraction to hopefully retain some of those folks to our department and bring them in. And so I guess that's, I think that helps to make us an attractive department, but you got to get them in the door.
and I appreciate that. I think, you know, we have a lot to offer, and I think, you know, the officers and staff are very well respected and do a great job. I think getting the groundwork done, I think getting us to approve it next Tuesday is probably not going to happen, because I would like to see finished stuff from Mr. Gallstead of how we could actually legally do it and put teeth in it. I mean, it'd be great if we could do that. So, you know, I think everybody wants to help out and wants to do something. I just want to make sure we have everything set and how we're going to do it and the way it's set up. For, you know, I know you have things going out and trying to go out and recruit people next week and the week after that, but, you know, I could be wrong, but it's well said.
I'm just, the question that I would have, I think logistically and legally, I think we can set it up. I'm need to sit down with you and to figure it out. Would it make any sense to have kind of a bifurcated program where you're offering something for the 2-year student and something different? Because for the 4-year, not meaning more, but how you go about it. Because the 2-year students coming out, they're going to have their post right there. So, and then the 4-year student, you've got to go into the skills training. So I'm just, does it make sense to kind of isolate your programming to the 2 years, you know, the associate degree, and to the separately for the 4-year degree? It just seems to me that you're kind of dealing with 2 separate things. You know, when you're coming to recruiting, one of them you can go in and you're going to recruit them while they're in school. The other one, you're kind of recruiting them when they're saying, I'm going into skills. So and maybe I just don't have a good handle on what you're saying, but it seems like it might make sense to do something like that, so you're concentrating on the individual that you can recruit.
We'd be recruiting those 4-year students while they were in school. They just wouldn't be eligible to start receiving the police recruit pay until they began skills. So they would have had to take that concrete step towards becoming a police officer. Whereas, like you mentioned, you can get a criminal justice degree and then decide I'm going to go attempt to get into law school the following year, or I'm going to become a social worker, or I'm going to do a number of other things that you can do with it. So they wouldn't be eligible for that. Whereas those 2-year law enforcement students, they're more limited. They could be choosing to go into corrections, but their options are pretty much corrections or law enforcement with that 2-year law enforcement degree. There aren't that many other paths they can take with that 2-year degree. So I was trying to be able to go after both sets of students with just the slight variation of it's the final stage of their preparation for a career. For both of them, it's just in the one, for the 2-year students, that skills program is built into that last semester, which is why I targeted the last semester, whereas for the 4-year students, it's a separate program. So it's very similar, it's just a different avenue of getting to the same point.
Yeah, no, this is your expertise. I'm just, from the discussion I'm looking at, and it's kind of comparing apples and oranges a little bit on the individuals that we're going after.
Maybe you and I can sit down here in the next few days and discuss this.
Peterson.
Is there a cost for the skills program?
It's like going to school. You'd have to pay for it. I don't know the exact costs, but
And it's 12 weeks.
I thought it was 10, but I could be wrong on that. It used to be 10. It might have changed since. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Because that be part of it, where you are paying for their tuition.
We could do that too.
Anybody else have anything?
I know that was one option that was discussed a month ago when we were in here, is potentially paying their tuition. It was just, I was, kind of trying to piece through the various suggestions that came up that time, and that's where I came up with this one. And, however, whatever direction you would like to see us move forward on, I'm open to. Just trying to give us some avenue to try to make it more attractive and get a few more people through the door.
Mary, you have something, sir?
I guess just a couple of thoughts that I would have. One, this would be wildly successful if we brought in 3 officers through this portal. So we're not talking about a massive sum of money.
No.
And number 2, I have the same concern, is this really a long-term fix? We're hoping that nationally this thing will kind of fix itself in the long term, that the old status quo of the desirability of going into law enforcement would come back up as we put that certain summer behind us. And so we can all decide in our minds if that's a real thing or not, if indeed the time passing will bring things back as they were, and how soon that might happen could coincide with the end of something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're already seeing the corner turn, but we've built such a huge hole of the number of jobs that are required right now, the number of positions that are open in departments across the country, and certainly across our state. That's where I'm just trying to find any avenue that we can to try to give us that one step up to be able to attract people for the short term. And long term, I'm hoping we get back to where we were and we have multiple applicants for one position. But right now, that's just not the case.
And maybe even as a small hybrid, you could take this and make our high school faculty and career counselors aware of it, probably back into even as people are choosing a major at Northland, this could be relevant to them also.
Yes.
The locals.
On that front, on April 27th, myself and at least 1 or 2 of our officers are going to be meeting with the law and justice class at senior high. And we're going in on a Thursday. Or Wednesday, I don't recall which. They have an hour and a half long class on the day that we're going to be in there. So we'll be giving presentations and talking to them for about an hour and a half on that date. And we're going to start making that a regular occurrence.
Thank you.
Tim, anybody else have a question or thoughts on this? I think the best thing to do is give it to Mr. Gallstead, I guess, to see. I guess we'll have to bring it back and then go from there.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Number 2, emergency management update. Chief Boushee.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Councilman and Councilwoman. I just wanted to take a few minutes to brief you on the work that we've been doing in emergency management, and then also talk with you about our situation with flood preparations. So, start off a little bit about our emergency management program and what we've been doing in that. We have emergency operations plan, which is our core central document that kind of guides us in our response to any emergencies. It tells us what we need to do, how we're going to do it, and who's going to do it. It's a pretty vital piece of document. And also our resource manual goes along with that. The one we have now needs revision. It needs to be updated, and it needs to be reformatted. That's a project I've decided to take on and look at and work on, so we've been working on that and included a few different staff members in the city to help out with that project. It's a big project. Once we get that project done, and that's going to be, we're talking about a 225-page document. It's not a small deal. But I want to get it to the point where I can present it to the council for your review and then hopefully adopt it as our emergency operations plan. So that's what we're working on there and hopefully bring to you in the future. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about in emergency management, we've been working on our emergency operations center. That's been a pretty big deal. And that is, the core to it is our staff, training our staff up to be able to manage and operate an emergency operations center. So we've been running with that. We did a 2-day class last year that you're aware of, And we've been building on that. We've been spending a lot of time in those classes and out of those classes, mainly organizing and just getting set up and just learning how to process stuff through the Emergency Operations Center. So that's coming along pretty well. Corey's done a really good job helping us. He did a SharePoint in Microsoft 365. That's really been the center of where we're bringing all of our information and our documents to. It's working out really well. Really nice job. And then in that, we've got some other people going out and doing some individual training. And we had Reid volunteer and Megan volunteer to go to a 2-day class for public information officer. And that'll be a real vital position to get trained. We'll use that in the EOC, and my vision is that that could be used anywhere within the city at any time. That position requires additional training to be able to put out good, accurate public information and not violate laws. So it's a big deal. So they're doing that. Assistant Fire Chief Paul Hansen and myself are in the middle of working on our emergency management certification through the state of Minnesota. We hope to be done with that probably this time next year. So that's going on. Any questions about our emergency management program?
Jeff had asked me to just update you on the flood from last year, that we did get reimbursed from the federal and the state. They obligated $84,000. They are withholding 10% for the state, so we did get a check for $81,962. We did forward approximately $15,000 of that to water and light expenses for the overtime and for equipment. And the only thing left on there is they did not reimburse us for the $33,000 that the city paid for the Valley Golf Cart path to get fixed. So we'll be sending an appeal on that, and we'll be looking at changing the lease so we don't have to fight FEMA again on something like this. So I know Ron's worked on it, that in the lease with Valley Golf, it says that if we damage it, then we will pay for the damages. That way FEMA can't say Valley Golf is in charge of the maintenance, and that's why they're saying they're not. But we will be filing an appeal here in the next couple weeks. So I just want to update you. And if you had any questions on that.
Yeah, so our emergency management program is moving forward. I feel real good about the direction we're heading with that. Although it's time consuming and we don't get a lot of time to spend on that, so it's a juggling act. If there's no questions with that, I'll move to the flood preparation update. So last Thursday, the National Weather Service gave us an update on outlook that put us at 50% chance of getting to the 42.6 level. Now keep in mind there's a lot of variables in that. There's a lot of things that can happen that can impact that one way or the other. So that's what we're just kind of looking at right now, using that number. With that, we did open up our EOC to the limited status, which basically that just gives us the tools and the structure and the people and the training we've been doing. It gives us a chance to exercise that. We met this morning for our first meeting for the flood and started that process of planning for our spring flood. We put together our organizational chart. I passed that out to you, and we assigned positions. And then we went through it, and each person who has worked for years in those positions and done these things time and time again kind of gave us an update on what they're doing in their area and the preparations they're making, and things are moving along in that regard. We're in good shape. Any questions on the flood?
Does this factor in the snowfall that we got again?
Yes, it does. Yep.
I guess I'd throw in on the flood, if I may. Having been at the fire hall when this was all coming down last year. And when the flood crest prediction was raised about 10 feet in about a 12-hour period, and watching our people just go according to the plans that you'd laid out weeks and months ahead, and the coordination between the city, Water and Light, Public Works, Fire, Police was pretty incredible, and the morale was high. The community is pretty blessed to have this whole organization in place for an event like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, with the additional training we have been getting citywide with our staff, I think we can perform even.
Good. Keep getting better. Why not?
Right.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you.
Megan?
The only thing I have to add is something that was talked about this morning is we will be doing a little bit more communicating, especially when it comes time to do like a declaration of a local emergency. We're going to try and put a few more messages included in our agendas and maybe give some more reports, just so residents are aware when we do declare an emergency. It's usually when we get to that 28-foot mark, and that's so we can get reimbursed for all the things that we are doing for flooding. So it's not to create alarm, it's just to get things in place so if there's a bigger disaster, we're eligible to have those funds reimbursed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Move on to number 3, the Grand Rides bike share update and sponsor requests. Reid, Huttunen.
All right, thank you, Mr. President and council members. A couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet with Blue Weber at the Downtown Development Association for an update on the bike share program and how they felt it went last year with our sponsorship and the first kind of year that the bikes were in operation under the DDA's ownership. From Blue's perspective, the program was a success. They had a full fleet of bikes out on the system for the entire summer, and saw an increase in the number of rentals that the system had as it relates to specific rides that either started or ended in East Grand Forks. They feel like that's data that they'll be able to provide to us at some point because there are GPS units on each bicycle. But they didn't have a report prepared yet that really tells us that information. The GPS software sends out a whole bunch of data points, and somebody that knows data analytics has to be able to go through that and create a readable report that you and I could understand. So there is a class at UND that has taken that on as a class project for the DDA and is working to put that together. But Blue felt like it'd probably be May or June timeframe this year before it was at a point that could be shared. So for now, the anecdotal just information that it was a success, the ridership was up, that they maintained a fleet of 60 bikes through the year last summer and plan to add more bikes to the fleet this summer. They plan to add a few more just regular style bikes, as well as a few pedal assist bikes, hand pedals for people that may have disabilities that want to take advantage of it as well. So I think in general it's a good program. The request is back to sponsor it again at the same level we did last year at $10,000. Last year we used some of our All True partnership funds to fund the program. And if you all would like to see us move forward with the sponsorship again, I think at this point that would be my feeling or my sense would be that those would be the dollars we'd use again for it. We did not add it into our general levy budget in 2023 to be included, so it would need to come from a source like that again to sponsor it.
Anybody have any questions or? Mr. Reid, Bill.
When did they start the analytics on this? Did they just get it going, or did they start right in the fall when everything ended? As far as research,
the
data,
start putting the data together. You mean?
Yes.
Or collecting it?
Well, getting the data all together and collecting it.
Yeah. So it was collected. The units were new on the bikes last year, the GPS units. So all of last summer we were collecting data. I don't know when UND took on the project to start mining that data and putting it together. I can ask that question, but I'm not sure.
I would rather have the data before we approve the amount.
Anybody else? Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I think this is a great program. I would agree with the All True funding is a good fit for it. We've got some new amenities and some new businesses here in East Grand Forks. I think people are going to want to use these bikes to come over and check out. So I think it's a win, in my opinion.
Event number 4, request to order GMC 2500 from North Country GM of Hibbing. Reid.
Thanks again, Mr. President. In our budget in 2023, the Parks Department budgeted $50,000 to replace 2010 Ford F-250. That's the primary use at the VFW Arena. So the North Country GM of Hibbing has a state contract for GM. So included in the packet was the data, the price quote for that. Interestingly enough, as you all know, with the vehicle shortages that we've seen, prices have really gone up dramatically. We bought one in 2019 for $34,500, and now it's up to $47,800. That's one interesting piece of it. The other interesting piece is that GM right now is the only manufacturer even releasing pricing. Ford won't even release pricing on work trucks, nor will Dodge, and even like if you call, I spoke with like locally a Reid Chevrolet, even they don't have pricing available on a work truck. So we're really limited right at this point. If we want to get an order in the queue of going through the state contract with North Country, they have the pricing available because they're the state contract holder. The other interesting part of it is when we place this order, there's not a guarantee that we're going to get a truck out of it. Basically, North Country GM will submit their order request to GM. GM will look at their total request of work trucks and decide how many they're willing to make. And if we are within that queue, we get a truck. If not, they'll tell us we're done making work trucks for 2024 model line, try again in 25. So we need to get the order placed and in, and hopefully we'll get good news back that we're included in the order queue from GM.
Anybody have any questions? See none, sir.
Thanks,
Thank you
sir.
so much. Number 5, review of memorandum of understanding with Bird Rides, Inc. Mr. Murphy.
All right, thank you. And I will be turning this over to City Attorney Gallstead here in just a moment. But remember, if you recall, this was before the council at a work session on November 22nd. Excuse me. At that time, there was a representative from Bird Rides, Inc. By the name of Julianne Roller, who appeared via Zoom and addressed the council. So, and at that point, she said she would bring it back sometime in the spring to look at trying to get this ready for use this summer. So she did provide us with a memorandum of understanding, which is really an agreement between the city of East Grand Forks and Bird Rides, Inc. I did send that to our city attorney to review. He did have 4 items that he thought need to be addressed or at least discussed. 3 of them are really more, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Gallstead here, but 3 of them appear more procedural and probably not real discussion items. I think they should be fairly straightforward. Though the one where I think is probably where the meat of it is the indemnification language in item number 7, and I will let Mr. Gallstead address that as far as the hold harmless, because the agreement does not require any monetary payment from the city. However, there is the potential that there could be some liability on that. Also included with your packet is the page on the City of Grand Forks website where you can look at where it takes it to the e-scooters, to the Bird app. You can download the iPhone and the Android one, just so that you know what that looks like, and a copy of what the proposed ordinance was for the City of Grand Forks for this. I do apologize, I have not had really the opportunity to really review that proposed ordinance in detail, but I will be looking at that. So I guess with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Gallstead, and he can go through the items that he wanted some clarification and some concerns with in the proposed agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Yeah, in that I just highlighted the first yellow highlight that I put into the packet under the memorandum of understanding is just to bring to your attention that it's an automatic renewal. I'm not in favor of automatic renewals. Under most circumstances, it is only a 30-day notice, so you don't have a big long time frame, but those are types of things that kind of forget if you don't want to have them. So I was just bringing that to your attention. Under number 2, this primarily deals with part of what would be in an ordinance. If you looked at the Grand Forks City ordinance, our city code already deals with bikes. The Minnesota statute 169.222 also deals with specifically bikes and all the rules regarding bikes. And then 169.225 specifically deals with electric scooters. So whether we have an ordinance or not that specifically talks about the use of an electric scooter, it's not really an issue. If you look at the, excuse me, I haven't been feeling very well. If you look at the North Dakota or Grand Forks ordinances, what does make some sense is to permit them, who's going to be able to do it, how are they going to do it, and how many people are going to do it. Those are a couple of the things that are concentrated on in their ordinance, other than under the bikes ordinance, or excuse me, Bike Inc. provided a template. You know, they talk about anybody, it's primarily 18. If you look at that can rent one. If you look at the Grand Forks scooter ordinance, you can be 12 years old, which is the same as Minnesota law, and they require helmets and those types of things. So those are what's dealt with. What we haven't dealt with would be the permitting process. If there's going to be more than one scooter company that we can do it, the things that the owners have to comply with. And then, as Mr. Murphy indicated, the indemnification and liability, I wouldn't, well, my recommendations would be you would never sign this document based upon that indemnification and hold harmless. Essentially what's happening there is, if for some reason there was a lawsuit and the city of East Grand Forks, and this is my opinion, the city of East Grand Forks was named, Bird Inc. would be controlling the lawsuit, which would be fine because you don't want, you know, more than one chef in the kitchen at the time. However, it says that they would never be liable for any special, indirect, consequential, or punitive damages. So, for instance, in a wrongful death lawsuit, it's all consequential. It's all special. It's all direct, you know, those indirect damages that you're getting for loss of quality of life, loss of profit, loss of wages, and which would potentially come back, I would say, if we were named in that lawsuit and we were a part of that lawsuit and there was any direct, special, or consequential damages, they would already be said, we don't have to pay for any of those. You've said that. Somebody's got to pay for it, and it would come out of the city. That's the way I read this. So I would eliminate everything in yellow there. If they want, they can go ahead and indemnify us, and if for some reason it's our personal responsibility that we were actually the ones that were negligent, then fine, that's our responsibility, but anything else would be their responsibility. They're the ones that are coming to us and want to run their scooters in the city of East Grand Forks. And then the other thing that I think that was about it. Oh, and then I just highlighted the hours of operation. It says that we can choose to limit those operations somewhat within the hours of 4 a.m. to midnight. I just wanted to point that out because it does say they're available 24 hours a day. And if we wanted to do this, we'd want to limit those. If you wanted to limit those hours, you'd have to actually limit them in writing, as opposed to otherwise it would be 24 hours a day. And that's really all I had. I'm not adverse to having scooters in the town. I think they could be an enjoyable alternative for transportation. I just think that that memorandum of understanding with the specifically the liability issues in there, I wouldn't recommend signing it. Any questions or concerns or? Thank you.
I guess if not, then we will we will take the recommendations from the city attorney. We'll get those back to Bird, and hopefully we'll have an agreed upon contract to bring back for you guys for approval.
Good to me. Okay, going to number 6, discussion interim position. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. I guess I don't really have a whole lot new to talk to you about this. I know it's something that we have had in the past when we have been without an administrator, so we have gone through the interim. There are a couple options to do that. We can go out to get an interim. I have put some feelers out there to some people that I know that are interested in it. So far, I have not had anybody express a real strong interest in it, to the ones I've been able to make contact with so far. It just has to do with distance mainly, and where they want to be, particularly during the summer months. So with that said, I know there's also been some discussion about the potential for an internal candidate. So I just want to get any feedback that the council might have, and I'd be more than happy to go whatever direction you give me.
I guess my thought process, if we do have internal people that want to step forward and throw their name in the hat, my thinking is today's a work session, our next work session is the 28th. I would like to have whoever they are, persons to get a hold of you, Mr. Murphy, and I guess through HR also, I guess, and come back to us at that work session, and then by April 4th, unless we decided to do a special meeting to appoint somebody to get going, I think I'd want to have it back by that 28th of the work session, in my opinion. And if we had people from the outside that maybe showed interest, we could bring both that with also, but I don't know, what's everybody else's thoughts? Unless you guys want to have a deadline of next week and we have a special meeting before that, I guess we have that option too.
Have outside people, how are you going to get the word out if you're going to have it next week?
Legal aspects of opinions on anything?
Well, because I could see, I guess
if you don't have a legal opinion on anything, don't get up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, to the point, I do have some contacts out there that I've contacted, but I haven't been able to get a hold of them all. So, I mean, the timing, as far as what was put forward by Mr. Olsett, I think would be doable.
I think 28th, bring it back, and then if we had to have a special meeting after that called, we can do that instead of waiting until the following week. Couldn't we? And that person would have till what, 21st of April or 20th is when you're here?
Yeah, my last day is the 21st of April.
I don't know what everybody else thinks. I'm good with that.
In the meantime, too, if any of our council members or any of the internal candidates that really want to do this would like to talk to Mr. Murphy about it, I'd say a good conversation should take place so that the next time we reconvene, we kind of all have our own viewpoints a little more solidified. This one still feels like it's a little bit in the ether, and we want to bring it in to make it a little more actionable, I think, between now and then.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have anything? See none. Entertaining a motion to adjourn then.
Move.
Moved by Larson. Second by Vetter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Means adjourned.